the developer in mind. If a developer came in, they would never put in a shape like
horseshoe.
that because it's inefficient. You would put in the shortest street and put a cul-de-sac at the end. That is also the worst way to plow snow. You get complaints the rest of your life with the homeowners on the side because you're pushing all the snow out into a smaller area and you're getting a lot of snow in people's driveways. It doesn't come off right, you never get right to the edge. If you do, you clip a mailbox, etc. So those are all problems. So the design is very city-oriented and it's safety-oriented, but not maximizing dollars oriented. And that's kind of where we end up with this 250-foot issue where it's like, well, we've already got the houses there, but you have no new increment to collect.
Well, I had a gentleman call me 2 weeks after our last meeting on August 17th, after he read the article in the Messenger that thought we were going to do away with tax abatement because he had just purchased a new home in that area with the understanding of the tax abatement in place, and he thought we were rescinding it. So he was, upset, a little bit concerned that we weren't going to continue on with our consistency there. So I assured him that, he was part of the original project and that he would get it. So, if Ryan bought that property and then, with the intentions of selling those lots, which he did evidently, and then if those folks are thinking about that, it does play a part of it. But I do think the street should be finished there. So I mean, for all the above reasons, but
we were always gonna finish the street, weren't we? It's just a matter of time and whether we're gonna do it. We didn't know. We were trying to sell all the other lots off to help pay for all the finishing of it.
Maple would have been done first, from what I've seen of the plans, correct? Before we ever would have gone to the west anyway.
See, the street would have been done eventually. It's just moving it forward, and now we're gonna end up with a shortfall probably that we're gonna have to backfill.
But we're operating with different information now. We didn't have, the fact that those lots were available at the time. So, I mean, so we've kind of got to look at adapting and changing and.
Is there anybody that's talking about building on these ones that it's gonna service, these lots that are there?
On the interior ones, Joel?
Yeah.
Not,
The interior, no.
Not on the interior.
not that.
4 lots on the interior.
Not that we're aware of anyway.
There's already 3 lots that are available that are interior lots. Now granted, they're not south-facing, which is an issue for some homeowners.
Can be.
They want a south-facing lot. So I think that those lots on the north side of phase 2 will be more desirable than the lots that are currently there, but we do already have 3 lots that are available on the north side of the development in the first phases of Eagle Ridge. And so there's nothing that tells
The north
me-
side of that street is what you're talking about.
Well, that face
Well,
north,
yeah.
Joel.
Right.
There's 3 that are ready to build right now, that are for sale.
Over by the trade zone.
Yeah,
Yes, 5 building trades. Yep.
By building trade zone.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Those lots.
and there's been no interest in them.
We've had a few people talk to us. I mean, I wouldn't say no interest, but I wouldn't put a lot of money on the fact that they're gonna sell it tomorrow either. A lot of people have conversations and don't really wanna win it, so.
Well, I think in light
And
of
those
the
are
change.
actually part of the original agreement, that they're not even actually in question, correct?
No, but actually they could be in question. That you as a city only have the ordinances in place till 2018, and all abatement is contingent upon the approval of the council, and nothing can be assumed outside of the approval of the council. So if you chose not to extend it, then abatement would die. If you chose to modify it, then abatement would die. You are not obligated at this point, I believe, to do anything on those. I mean, I would say, the houses are built, you carry it through those, but the ones that are vacant land, I mean, there's nothing tying your hands, especially in that Humboldt County Housing's, I think, position would be whatever it takes to get it done, but at the same time, obviously, you want to be fair to all parties as much as possible, so. It is a tricky question, that's why I just need guidance.
Well, I would say in light of the new development and the changes that have taken place up there, I think it's important that we do finish the street out to the end and make it practical for all service purposes, it seems like.
I would agree 100%. I think we need to move ahead with the project, and And I also think in my own mind that we need to offer tax abatement. I really do. I look at what's happened, like I said before, in the last 15, 20 years in Humboldt. I mean, my goodness, whoever thought that many homes would be built? And on the tax roll now.
How many do you think that were built just because of tax abatement?
I'll bet you quite a few of them.
Think so?
Well, some
Well,
and
move ahead
some,
with the
it's,
first question.
it's
Yeah.
some and
Well, they'll
some.
ask that, but I mean, we all ask that question, but just, I didn't know if it would stop me from building a house, should I really be building a house, and I guess is what I'm questioning.
Well, the gentleman I,
That's what I was asking.
yeah, I know it.
It may,
The
it
gentleman
may
I,
not change them buying or building a house, it may change how much they put into it. And over the years, we gain much more if they build a better, bigger house than if they build a smaller one because they don't get abatement up front. I agree with John, I think we need to keep doing it, it's been good for the city. I've lived here all my life, and it just keeps growing, and we want it to keep growing.
it
And that's
could,
part of the reason it's growing.
I could say that we're in competition against other communities too, because if I've read articles that other communities are offering these tax abatement, do I, is it, so if we have tax abatement, is, is it worth them living in Humboldt, or if we didn't offer it, I mean, would they look at some other community to build their new home and,
Right, but there's always a cost factor.
There is.
This could cost the city a lot of money down the road. That's one of the things, would the other cities agree that it's gonna cost them out of their own pocket? Or would they, I guess that's the difference here. If it looked like it was gonna pan out, I think it'd be the greatest thing in the world. But, when you start talking about that the taxpayer of Humboldt are gonna have to cover this, then, then those people we have to answer to. That
But I don't
why
think,
they should have to pay
I
for
don't
it.
think, I don't think it's gonna cost the taxpayers well.
Well, maybe not.
I really don't.
I don't think that's all
And
right.
I looked at 3 homes that are gonna be built on the south side, and every one of those is gonna be $400,000 or $500,000 homes. Now,
Well, like I said, it depends on the appraisal,
yeah,
what they put.
exactly, and I can't believe that most of those houses up there right now are, I mean, you said they were appraised at 300,000, I can't drive, I don't know how the hell they come up with that.
What we'll be looking at,
Of course, you can't count the land.
Huh?
So you take the
Yeah.
land price out of it, then you take,
I
so
suppose.
that does take some,
Yeah.
chunk out of it, so.
So I guess I'm for moving ahead with the TIF and getting the project done and moving ahead with the tax abatement. I could see maybe 15 years, we may not develop Eagle Ridge 3 for 15 years, if all these, unless all these lots get full.
You could,
Could be, I mean,
We
it could
could
be,
be doing it.
could be never. I
you have, Brent, you have anything to offer about that at all, or?
No, I agree that, we need to create the infrastructure to allow future growth, so, the street's part of it.
How do you need that, in a motion or something, or?
As long as there's consensus, then that's enough direction. I can bring back the ordinance modifying the urban revitalization to include that area.
so if this burden was to fall back on the taxpayers, what would they be looking at? Because I guess that's where Walter's going with this. If we actually have to go back to the taxpayer and say, look, we have to raise the property taxes on everybody because of this, what are we looking at?
Well, you're looking at $389,000 because there's no guarantees whatsoever that any home will ever be constructed. You could potentially pay every last dime out of general obligation. That's the worst case scenario. I don't use that in my assumptions, but that's the
We
worst
already
case
know
scenario.
that's not gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen, but due diligence, I gotta tell you, you are
Mhm.
on the
I mean,
hook
yeah.
for every last dime. But-
If you decided not to build and
Mhm.
the other folks that have committed have decided not to build, then that's our initial investment, is the $389,000 from
Yeah.
the company in
And that's what,
Waterloo.
and that's what Allers and Cooney, the bond council will tell you as you go through all that. But based off my assumptions, assuming the things that I stated earlier, 15 years, 2-year build out, assessed at 300,000, you're looking at a liability of about 200,000 if the north side doesn't develop. Now, if the north side does develop, then you're looking at even less. What do those come in at? Good guess, maybe 200,000. And so then you've got the abatement that's gonna take it back from that, and so how many of that 15 years will you actually really be able to collect it? Because if they build it in year 7 and they have a 5-year tax abatement, then you're only collecting full taxes for 2 years. And so you've got the reduced taxes for the other 8 years. And so it's really hard to guess that north side. But I would say your liability is probably gonna end up in that 100,000 range. I think that 100, 150, somewhere around there, it's all just a guessing game at that point. And it's hard to know, even under the current, what's currently being collected under tax increment financing to pay the $1.3 million on Eagle Ridge that's out there. Now, that's overperforming at this point, but you don't know if it's gonna overperform in the long run. There's Birdie's putting specs up, and so the houses continue to roll and come online. But if you hit a wall as far as a huge housing recession, they probably gladly give you the lot back rather than build a spec house, in which case then you've got a lot, no taxes, and an obligation that you have to pay. So seeing how looking into the crystal ball and seeing how they're gonna perform, it is a lot more art than it is science, and so I'm always hesitant to say this is exactly how it's gonna turn out. But based off of assumptions previously made for Eagle Ridge Phase 1, which is performing well, I would guess in that 100 to 150. So.
But won't you get some of those funds from future sales of lots?
That money will go to Humboldt County Housing Development, and then obviously the Ryan side will go to Ryan, and then the north side will go to Humboldt County Housing Development. So,
That'd be nice.
so, I mean, that's the, that's,
This is all you get the money from, is a TIF, basically, this is,
Yeah, I wouldn't-
basically.
it's not to say that there isn't future chances for, Humboldt County Housing obviously is an extension of the city and county, and so there's no reason that they wouldn't be supportive of investing more money in Eagle Ridge, but at the same time, I would say it's hard to count on that until you actually get out into the out years and you see the return on that dollar, and then, Daryl was the representative on that board, and Daryl can be that, and I am too, obviously. and work out.
Are there covenants in place in that neighborhood where the house has to be a certain square footage or?
On the north side,
On
because
the
that was
north
originally
side.
platted with those covenants in place. I don't know
So,
what Ryan's
Is
put in place.
are you participating in those covenants, Ryan, as far as square footage is concerned, so that we have kind of, a minimum size home up there?
There's-
That's what I mean, is it a
there-
2,000 square foot home, 2,500 square foot
There-
home that has
okay.
to be built on those lots, or what is it here?
It won't be protected covenants, that will actually be a development agreement that we'll have to put in place. And I've talked with Jeff and I've talked with Ryan about it, it's about making sure that there is some procedure that guarantees, the homes will be built in a certain time period, and that gives us some insurance that there's a clawback mechanism or a minimum assessment that kicks in.
Right.
Should these
Well,
homes not.
That's only fair
Four
once you,
homes or three
when
homes
doing,
or what? So if only 3 homes and one would have to get a payback then on one home then, or what are you telling
No,
us?
I'm
I guess I'm
saying,
confused
so,
here a little bit.
what and this is, we're getting muddied into like 5 different issues, but the development agreement would outline the fact that you developer who is not HCHDC, who is not funded by the city, are a different breed than a developer who is within the city and a county economic development organization. So with it being a different relationship, you need to have that development agreement in place that says, should it not be profitable and in your best interest, you will probably not do something. And so whereas the development corp does a lot of things that are not in their best interest because they're looking for the greater good. They produce studies that are for the population, things along those lines. And so with a developer, you use, I talked with Allers and Cooney, who does all of our development agreements, and we've talked through about 3 different ways that it can be structured. But the way that I'm leaning towards, and I think that they're leaning towards, is to use a minimum assessment agreement that says, okay, if you do not build the homes in, let's say, 3 years, then that 3rd year's taxes come online at $300,000. And if you do not build the home, you're still paying the $300,000 house, because then the tax increment financing is collected. Now, I'm pretty sure that that's probably not much of an issue, because I think all the homes are spoken for if it comes online. And so that's just a matter of making sure that in that X amount of years or that there's
That's
something.
fair.
That seems
And
reasonable.
that covers the city's,
Otherwise, you're-
situation of ending up with 389,000.
Right.
Because then you're
Well, that's what
guaranteed.
that's where I was getting
Yeah.
at. Do we, we really need some kind of an agreement or something about a time frame that this is gonna all happen in, rather than just an open-ended,
Yeah. And the North,
open-ended agreement that just says we might.
yeah, and that's exactly what the development agreement comes to into play, is giving you some certainty. Now, here's the thing, I mean, the walkaway mechanism is to, quick claim it to the city and say, here you go, now you have 4 lots, and I want no part of this. Walk away. You have 4 lots, you might be in a huge housing recession, but, there always is that worst case scenario where, it could be.
You know what? What you're saying is the sky could fall tomorrow too. Pretty much what.
I just don't wanna be the
That's
guy.
pretty much what it boiled down to.
Yeah,
You
and that's
know.
what you pay,
Yeah.
that's what you pay.
I mean,
attorney.
there's a lot of ifs out there. Every time I get up in the morning, there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't sit back and sit on your hands and worry about what might happen tomorrow or what might happen next year. You
As long
gotta,
as
you just same way with your business.
I know,
You know.
as long as we got an agreement. I think everyone's
Exactly.
happy.
Yeah.
I've lived there for nearly,
Yeah.
way over 60 years. Where my house sits was a cow pasture when I went to school. We've never had a recession of housing or anything else in this town. It hasn't always grown as fast as it is the last few years, but it's still been growing. And I'm not afraid to think it'll still keep growing.
Ryan, this isn't a surprise that you'd have to have a development agreement with it. I mean, you probably had this conversation with Aaron before about all that, so it's not.
It was, when I bought that land, it wasn't to be developed. So, and Aaron knows that, I wanted to sit my house and actually in the middle of that. And then it was brought to me, would you be interested in putting it part of it? So, as you know, as you build that in, more people are gonna come to it. So,
Right.
does TIF money pay off or tax payment pay off? I think it does, because it's gonna it did drive me to do something, because my house is actually gonna be about another 100 feet to the west. And now there is a house in the ground, I have foundation in the ground, so there's one house, and I know of 2 others that are going in the spring, on that same, and they will hit the $300,000 mark, I don't see that being a problem.
As far as the
On
assessed
aggregate,
value.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I still own all the land, but this is a big part of what,
Yeah,
so however this works, yes, I mean, 3 years to me seems pretty quick. Because here's what's gonna happen, if you guys probably pass, I'm gonna pass on to Bertie, and Bertie's gonna develop it, I'm not a developer, I didn't buy it to developer, I'm not a developer. This is more to help the city and to help growth, and I think if we add houses up that south side, I think it helps that development, there's more families, there's more kids, when people come to town to look at it and they see that, that's what, people drive people to communities, I moved back because of the people of Humboldt, I mean, that's the same thing of neighborhoods, so
So
I guess that's the true story of how this started.
Bertie, then the agreement transfers to Bertie then to build the houses?
You put-
What happens then?
You put in an agreement that follows with the land. And so, and I've talked with Mark and I've talked with Jeff about it too. Jeff said 8 years. I said, that doesn't work, Jeff, so, no, he was joking about that, but, it's a matter of trying to figure out what balances both interests. I think everybody's looking for the best interest of making the development happen, getting young families out there,
So we need an agreement, are we kind of not at step 1 yet, am I confused? Are we?
No, because the development agreement's gonna cost it's probably gonna cost $5,000 to put in place, or somewhere less than that. And so as you spend money, you wanna make sure that everybody's on the same page as we're moving forward. So there's several things that have to move at the same time, in which case you've got to, we've gotta get the update to the tax abatement. Right now, D.A. Davidson is waiting, I'm probably gonna call him when I leave the meeting, if this is okay to move forward with. because I don't want to start the process of issuing bonds, which is a long process, until I know that everybody's on page with tax abatement. Once you're forward, you're either supportive or not supportive of tax abatement, then we can get the update on the urban renewal or urban revitalization plan. We can get the bonds started. I can, get the development agreement closer to being finalized with Ryan. That's all kind of hinging out there ambiguous, and so as we move forward, there's a lot of things that go concurrently at the same time. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily step one, step two, step three. It's never that orderly, because if you did it in that order, it'd take you a year and a half to get it done, because you've got so many different things that have to be changed as you move forward and adding an area. Step one was actually the urban renewal plan being updated to include that amendment of area that included Ryan's land to the south, because you can't do anything until you get that plan modified. And that's the worst hurdle to jump through. The others are more manageable. That requires a consultation meeting with the county and school. It requires public hearing and publication, et cetera. So,
Which you've been working on since our last council meeting, right? The urban renewal.
I've been working on that for the last 6 months.
Okay,
So, ever since first time Ryan and I talked about
okay.
trying to get everything in place, because, a lot of that is just, it does take a very long time. Just to draft the plan takes probably about 3 months.
So what you need at this point is that we're all on board with going ahead with the TIF and going ahead with the tax abatement and move forward from this point.
Yes,
Is that correct?
I need clarification on, are we going forward with the tax abatement, and are we not going forward with the tax abatement? If we're not going forward with the tax abatement, then we have to figure out.
Well, there is no TIF on this portion.
No,
This is purely tax abatement.
This discussion is strictly about tax abatement.
No.
Tax increment financing is
Does not
more
apply
of
to
a-
this at all.
It's more of it's a follow-on in the sense that the less tax increment financing that's produced because you add tax abatement means that you have to consider that when you make the decision about the tax abatement. And so that's another reason we're talking about tax increment finance.
Well, I think as long as we try and get some safeguards in an agreement that somewhat protects the taxpayers, I think we can move forward with it. We need to have something. But I guess if we can do that, I guess I'm in support of moving forward with it, but that has to be a caveat that we have some kind of an agreement moving forward.
I definitely think we need to move forward with keep the tax abatement up there. I really do.
I agree. I think it's a good project, a worthwhile project.
I agree.
I agree.
Just we'll work with Ryan to get things squared away, so we're covered, and go from there, I guess.
Sounds good. I will get that into place.
We good?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Next, we need to discuss tax abatement for Eagle Ridge Addition Phase 2. Also, we'll discuss potential financial measure for Eagle Ridge Addition Phase 2 for refunding capital loan notes.
Okay, so this has been kind of I don't know if you guys remember about a year ago, we did the municipal disclosure program where we told the SEC that we were sorry that we did not have full information in the preliminary offering statements, or preliminary official statements that we issued, and we did not have continuing disclosure the way that the SEC liked it. Now granted, that was basically every municipality and every underwriter across the country got caught in that, except for maybe one or two very, very, very detail-oriented cities that have too much money to worry about such things. But, so we were involved in that. We did disclose everything and sent that into the SEC and never really heard anything back. So, as part of that though, Allers and Cooney, who's a bond counsel, in addition to being the tax increment financing and development counsel, they are our bond counsel. And they have always advocated for a financial advisor through this process of issuing bonds. But I've always somewhat held off on really doing much about it because, you know, for the most part, nobody really had a financial advisor. But when the SEC came back and had some issues, we started a relationship with Piper Jaffray and Tim Oswald, with Piper Jaffray. He is a financial advisor. He is basically the same person as D.A. Davidson, Scott Stevenson with D.A. Davidson. They both serve as both underwriters and financial advisors. So I asked Tim, because the underwriter cannot be your financial advisor, they have to be two completely separate parties. And so you can have Scott Stevenson be the underwriter and Piper Jaffray with Tim Oswald be the financial advisor or vice versa. And so I talked with Tim and I said, you know, what's your thoughts? And he gave me a quote of roughly about $7,000 to be the financial advisor on the issuance. Kind of the side note on this is, so what do you get for $7,000? For $7,000, you get the statement of, we believe that this is market rate and fair. Now the question you have to ask yourself, and this is what I asked for Alders and Cooney, was, so what incentive does D.A. Davidson have to not give a market rate and to not be fair with their clients? A, if you have a bad deal or a deal go wrong with a single municipality, you know, they do business all across the state. I have a hard time believing they would, you know, soil their name just to try and get an extra $1,000 out of us. And so that's one concern. And honestly, Tim Oswald kind of said the same thing when I was talking with him. He said, you know, as far as being a financial advisor, you know, you're dealing with, you know, if you're going to like a sealed bid process where you take and you say, okay, we are looking for $1.4 million and we want everybody to compete, everybody's gonna send in sealed bids and then we're gonna open them and that's how we're gonna decide the process. He said, if you went to that, then I could be your financial advisor on that and give you, you know, and go through that process. He said, if you're working with a negotiated deal like we are with D.A. Davidson, he said there's really, you know, there's somewhat diminishing returns because you would have to believe that D.A. Davidson is somehow not issuing a market rate. And, you know, I've flipped through the deals that they've had recently, and I had Piper Jaffray, and I can just give you this, it's an example of what he gives as part of that $7,000. I said, not much to it. Basically, it's just kind of a blanket statement, yeah, it's market rate. You know, not to say that they're you know, as David Dockstead always says, it braces in the belt, you know, you're getting a lot of assurance there. You've got somebody who's not me. I'm not a, you know, financial genius. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't deal in securities. So if you want the official opinion, then, you know, this is the guy. This is who you want to have do it, but it's going to cost you $7,000 to get there.
Is this all the city's expense? Do we pass this back on like we do to a normal customer, then that goes back to the client or something?
This would, well, I mean, that's up to you on how you want to allocate costs. Normally, it's all rolled into the bond, and so everything, you just take it and lump it all together as cost of issuance. So as
Like when Syntex put the building on, we did that stuff, and they had to pay $7,000 for attorney fees and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Why is that? How
That's
is that
a
different then?
tax, that was a tax rebate, and so with the tax rebate, we've had, the individuals receiving the tax rebate actually pay for the cost, of that tax rebate. We didn't have bond issuance with tax rebate, so you don't have any bond issuing costs when you go out and do a tax rebate, you just have the development agreement costs. So you've got the attorney's fees for the development agreement, and that's always been passed back. With Eagle Ridge Phase 1, we didn't pass these through. It's not to say that you can't. Well, I guess we did. It went on to tax increment finance. So all of that was caught by tax increment finance. It wasn't borne by a single individual so much as borne by the development as a whole. And that's the way this is currently structured.
So how do you count this one as not a city development?